to be able to interact and get supplies and things from the CIA tactical division, and report back solely to Dick Helms. My father, made these reports and delivered to Dick Helms, and that's come out in more recent times. So he wasn't actually retired from the CIA when he joined the Nixon White House, and people, I think, are under the false impression that the White House courted my father into joining, but in reality, my father courted Chuck Colson, who was a Brown alumni. My father graduated from Brown University, and so did Charles Colson, who was Nixon's special counsel. And he actually went out seeking Colson and the possibility of working for Nixon at the behest of Dick Helms, who wanted to know just what the hell was going on in Nixon's White House. Of course, Helms and Nixon didn't get along, and Hoover and Nixon didn't get along, and Nixon had been trying to get both the FBI and CIA to engage in domestic surveillance and bugging and planning of evidence and that sort of thing, and they refused him, and so he started this internal White House investigative unit, which eventually was nicknamed the Plumbers because one of their first jobs was to find who was leaking information about the Vietnam War to the New York Times, and so they were to plug the leaks. But yeah, there was definitely a strong CIA presence during the Watergate burglaries, and I mean it's hard to say if that was. I mean, certainly when McCord went back and retaped the latch on the door. That should never have been done, because once it was shown that the tape had been pulled off and that their entering of the place had been discovered, it should never have been retaped, and they should have aborted the operation at that moment. And who knows, history may have been changed at that time.
Oh, okay.
But they didn't.
But now you're saying that Helms, through McCord, through Colson, inserted these guys like Sturgis and Hunt, right? Now, Nixon had to be savvy enough to know that, hey, these are the guys that around JFK hit,
Well, as a matter of fact, prior to my father and Colson talking about working for the White House in this special investigations unit, Nixon had mentioned the name Howard Hunt, and you can hear this on one of the tapes where they're talking about bombing the Brookings Institute, and then Nixon is just sort of ranting, Hunt's the man to get for that job. Now this was 3 months before the official request for Howard Hunt to join the White House team was made. And during this 3-month period, my father went down to Miami to engage his old Cuban comrades to join a possible unit that worked for President Nixon. And my dad stressed the fact that this may lead to a reassessment of our policy with Cuba and eventually a possible reinvasion of Cuba, and so Bernard Barker and Sturgis and Hugo Martinez and the other few guys, jumped on board. Anything to, my father had a very good reputation with the Cubans. He was Eduardo,
right.
That was his war name, and he was, he was there in the training camps, with our teammate. Training the Brigade 2506. These were his deepest comrades, the people that he counted as his faithful, not only his faithful followers, but brothers in arms for a mutual cause, and that was to kill Castro and get back into Cuba. So it wasn't hard for him to recruit them back into the fold. But yeah, he was in CIA at that time, and of course he had stated under oath that he had never met Frank Sturgis, for example, until Watergate, when that's absolutely false. He and Frank worked together doing airplane pamphlet dropping from airplanes over Cuba during the run-up to the Bay of Pigs. So he knew Frank from way back then. And, of course, Bernard Barker was, one of Castro's secret police chiefs and was my father's right-hand man during the whole Bay of Pigs thing. So these guys had a history with my dad, and so that's how that worked out.
How about Liddy? How did he fit into all this?
Well, Liddy and my father were introduced by Colson, and Magruder, I believe, brought Liddy into it. Liddy was ex-Treasury Department, and had his claim to fame was that he had headed an operation that busted Tim Leary. He had been chasing Tim Leary around for a while, and my father and Liddy became very fast friends. He was over at our house many, many times alone, and also with his wife Francine and their children. But my father admired Gordon as someone who stood by his own principles, regardless of popular conception or regardless of what anybody else thought. And of course, Liddy's been portrayed as being a rather overzealous kook who would hold his hand over a flame to show just how strong his will was. And of course, that is a true story. And he also said that he was ready and able to kill anybody that the White House directed him to, including my father, and also to stand on the street corner for himself to be killed by members of the White House or Nixon's camp if they thought the need was so great that Liddy had to be executed. He was willing to stand on a corner and wait for the bullet to come. So that is kind of kooky, but in that kind of business, you need men with a strong sense of purpose, however diluted or perverse it may be. That's just the way they work.
But Liddy would come over to the house for dinner, and I suppose he didn't eat rat like he did in prison, but he would come over to the house for dinner, and you would socialize with his kids?
Yeah. When the few times that he brought his children over, we would watch television together or whatever. But Liddy and my father, as well as when the Cubans came over, Artime or Barker, Sturgis, and those people, they would, we would all have a big family type dinner, and then the men would all go downstairs to my father's private office for hours. And at the time, they were obviously discussing the various Watergate-related black bag jobs that they had going on or that they were about to do. So a lot of those things got hatched at our home in Potomac, and of course I didn't know it at the time at all until later. But I knew that my mother and my father had been arguing, which they never did, and in many confidential discussions with my mother, she let it be known that she had been advising my father to get out of this whole Nixon thing. And my father was just, pleased as pie that he was in the White House and that this is going to be his big chance to reinstate himself as a big player in this kind of political underworld field, because of his failure in the Bay of Pigs, or the failure of the Bay of Pigs. He was, he never quite got over that, and he looked at this chance to work for Nixon as a chance to redeem himself in the eyes of the big players, and perhaps be rewarded with a higher position in CIA or a higher position in Nixon's White House. Of course, it all went to hell.
And when you think about it, he already made his mark in history. Just amazing. Because he was part of the assassination of Che Guevara and Lumumba, right?
Yes, the Che Guevara thing. He was Felix Rodriguez was one of his guys, and he was Felix was there at the camp there where they finally tracked Che down, and Felix was happy to put the bullet in his head, but he made a phone call to someone who I assume have been my father, and was told that no, you better let the local police put the bullet in his head, and just so we can distance ourselves directly from that assassination. But yeah, he was involved in so many things, starting with the overthrow of the Guatemala regime. And even prior to that, he worked a little bit on the overthrow of the in Iran that brought the Shah of Iran into power. Then there was the Guatemala job, which was very successful. He opened up the first Mexico station of the CIA in Mexico. That was a big feather in his cap. And then he was put on as one of the top designers of the Bay of Pigs invasion, who he worked with. Putting the provisional government together that would run Cuba after the successful operation. He was in charge of many mafia-related assassination attempts against Castro, none of which were successful, of course. But, he knew John Rosselli and worked closely with him on those operations. And continued those operations long after Robert Kennedy, thought he had put a stop to those.
Did guys like Rosselli and them ever come to the house?
Pardon me?
Guys like Johnny Rosselli, did they ever come to the house?
No, not to my knowledge. Anyways, that would have been quite interesting. But yeah.
Now, did you stay in touch?
Quite a guy,
Yeah. Did you stay in touch with any of these, the kids and stuff like that, or family, friends? Did you stay in touch with any of these people?
Well, actually, when my father passed away, I came down here to Florida and attended his services in Miami, and was greeted with much love and embraces by Felix Rodriguez and Bernard Barker, and that. The remnants of the old Cuban crowd, the Brigade 2506, and was really shown a tremendous amount of love for my father through me, and was really treated warmly and given many hugs and kisses from the Brigade members and Felix and people like that. So there was a great deal of respect shown to me, of which I was very appreciative of.
And I can imagine you walked away there thinking, if I ever have a problem, I know who to call.
Exactly. I know some Cubans.
Oh my God, the best in the world.
Yeah.
You walk away from there with no fear, forget it.
Don't mess with me.
I can imagine. But now, because we're coming up to a really hard break at the hour, we got to take a long 5-minute break. Now, what about though? Since you've come out in the public, now this is the kind of situation where a friend of the family would call you up and say, "Hey, man, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to talk like this. I'm not threatening you, but this you're making a problem here." Has that happened?
No, nobody except my father's attorney and my immediate family members, my stepmom and her two children that she had with my dad after my. Years later, after my mother passed away, they're the only ones that have verbally, said that I shouldn't be embarking on this path. And of course, the punishment was, a life of not having a family anymore. And I loved my stepmother very much. I thought she was a fine woman. Very naive to be married to E. Howard Hunt, but he, as he told me a few times, that part of his life was over, and as a condition to their marriage, he had told her that he was not involved in any way in the death of JFK or in the assassination of anybody. That he'd never been involved with the mafia and things, and she just believed him, hook, line, and sinker. Gotcha. And so there was a lot at stake when my dad and I were talking about JFK and Watergate. There was a lot at stake, and he ended up, and I don't blame him, but he ended up folding, not having the strength to work with me on it.
Gotcha. We have to take a break now. We're with St. John Hunt, the son of E. Howard Hunt. He's the author of The Bond Secrecy. We'll be right back after this message.